What is the state of this Texas A&M football program heading into the last game of this 2022 lost season against LSU? All that and more on this episode of the Locked On Aggies podcast.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Aggies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Joey Ikes. Thanks so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, so go check us out there at Locked On Aggies as well. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I'm joined again today by my good buddy, Cameron Honesty of Aggies Wire. Cameron, we are here to sort of take a snapshot of what the state of this A&M football program looks like right now. They're coming off of their 20-3, frozen rain storm sloppy relay race of a football game against UMass on Saturday, and heading into the final game of the year against LSU on rivalry weekend. And we know that, or we have a very strong belief that coming out of that LSU game, there's going to be a lot of changes happening with this A&M program pretty rapidly. And we'll probably get into that as we go through the show. So we wanted to sort of take a step back instead of focusing on what happened against UMass and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to sort of take a step back and talk about where is this program right now and where do we feel like they go from here? So Cameron, coming off of, they're 4-7, we've talked about how this is a lost season. Yeah. What's sort of your biggest takeaway? It can be positive or negative from this season so far. That's going to really that their approach to the offseason is going to tell you a lot about the way they think about this program.
Yeah, I mean it's a mixture of a couple things. Obviously, the first is offensive play calling. How bad it was, how bad it went throughout the first half, and then kind of carried over in the second. And everybody looks at Jimbo Fisher as one of the better play callers that we've seen the last decade or so. And we talked about, I actually mentioned it in one of the articles I wrote today about the 2013 Florida State offense. I believe it's still, to this day, the highest scoring offense in a season in FBS history. That he was calling the plays for every season since he became head coach, since he started coaching at Florida State as an offensive coordinator, carried over to every year as head coach at Texas A&M. And how far he's fallen in that aspect. And granted, offenses have progressed. They've spread out more. It's more about the athlete than it is about the scheme and everything else, how you use these special guys you get in your program. And, from big heads in media who have said it's ego, to us here who have said it's ego, that it's a guy who's had success, who has, won a title, one of, I don't know, you can kind of correct me, it's like one of 4 active head coaches that have won a title.
I think it's 5 because Urban Meyer's not active anymore, but Kirby Smart has won a national title now.
So he's on one of those selective lists. And so when you look at yourself and think that way, which, look, I don't think I'll ever know what that feels like to be on a list like that. So I can't be in his shoes and think, well, I wouldn't be that way. But he's hurting this program right now just by the fact that he's not stepping aside. And so I can kind of relay that and combine that with the special player he has on offense that he just found out how special he is when he started him against Ole Miss, is Connor Weigman, who I have felt better throughout the week. And, we're in game week right now. So we're all writing about LSU and everything coming up to that game. And we're not all focusing on the offseason just yet. But he is one of those players who I am so excited for, and I'm very, very excited for the combination of guys like Moose Muhammad, guys like Evan Stewart, who are young. Moose is only a sophomore. Evan Stewart, obviously a freshman. These are two wide. Noah Thomas, I can throw in there, who's played a little bit more, also a freshman. He had Donovan Green. I'm sorry, I didn't get to my point, but there are so many weapons around him too that are young, that are talented. They're just going to get better and better. And I look at all those guys, and specifically Weigman, and I think, okay, you get the right guy calling plays, setting up, utilizing the talent around you and helping you. And I'm not saying really a quarterback coach. I believe that, look, for all the flack Jimbo Fisher gets, I think he still does a good job with trying to mold these guys. Look, Kellen Mond, very up and down quarterback throughout his career at A&M. He had to change systems pretty quickly. I think he still credits Jimbo Fisher with helping him through that. I'm not taking that away from Jimbo. I think Weigman and him have a good relationship. I think every quarterback that's been there, even Zach Calzada, who we felt he kind of left on poor terms, still says he's had a good relationship with Jimbo Fisher. So that aspect of the offense, I don't think needs to go away as much. But yes, it's play calling. It's everything around how this offense scores points with the talent they have. And Jason, I think Billy Leach of Texas has made a great point this week. We both heard him talking about South Carolina and what they did to Tennessee. South Carolina does not have the talent that A&M has. Not even close. And they put up, 63 points against a team we thought was going to possibly win a title this year. And we're not saying Tennessee had some lights-out defense. But that is unbelievable that is happening. And that we can't even get 29 points in one other game. I mean, what is it? 31-28 was the high-scoring outputs in the season opener and against Ole Miss.
Yep.
And granted, one of them was with Connor Weigman, one of them was against Sam Houston State, and Haynes King had a rare good day. So I mean, I'm watching that game, Joey, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm sitting there actually writing about A&M, watching that game and going, how is this possible? How is this happening? And we're sitting here talking about, well, it's Jimbo Fisher and his history and all this, and you go from that year in Florida State to where you're scoring 50 a game, it seemed like, and you can't even muster 25 sometimes. And it's mind-boggling, and they know they have to make a change. We know they're going to make a change by now. And so really, yeah, I'm not even going to mention defense at all from the outlook, because I think they're just going to get better. I think that DJ Durkin actually, as of late, has done a pretty decent job with the guys he's had to play. He's had to use a lot of the young guys and the rotations and starting. I mean, there's been a ton of injuries, over 30 plus on this roster and on the starting unit this season. And look, attrition is a thing. I know we can't blame it. We don't want to blame attrition because they've just been bad this season. But on defense, yeah, these guys, no matter how much good experience they're getting, which is fantastic, because I mean, if a bulk of these freshmen stay and come into 2023 with the resume they have and just the stat lines and the SEC experience, really, I mean, they're going to be ready no matter what. And so I'm not worried about that side. I think Durkin's doing a decent job. I think it's all offense. It's all offense. Changes need to be made. And I think a lot more than we think are going to be made. Some we might love, some we might not like. But look, the head man is staying, and he has to be held accountable, which he is. But to the point where, someone needs to tell him, you are destroying this program, and you will be the guy in front of it. Like, they're going to blame you. They're not going to blame an assistant coach or somebody. They're blaming you. And that's going to be a stain on your resume, your coaching resume forever. I mean, you can go to West Virginia to ride off in the sunset and coach in the Big 12, but guess what? They're always going to remember that. So fix it. You know how to do it. You have the resources, and there are plenty of names. We wrote articles about it. Every other outlet has wrote articles about the guys that are out there that would love to come to Texas A&M and coach up a Connor Weigman-led offense. I mean, so that's all I got.
There you go. So you talked a lot about a really important hire that Jimbo Fisher is getting ready to make as an offensive coordinator, and there are widespread reports that is something that is going to happen going into the next season. And just like the offensive coordinator hire for Texas A&M, right now for your small business, it feels like every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You've got to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go to LinkedIn Jobs, create your free job post. It's extremely easy to do, extremely user-friendly. Then add your job to the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Cameron, before we get into the second segment and the rest of our takeaways for this season, now that, guys, we found Locked On Aggies and you're listening to Locked On Aggies regularly, we thank you for that. Make sure you also go check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And we're talking about Connor Wigman. Cameron.
Too much Connor, yeah.
Yeah, lots of Connor on our brains and on our minds right now. But the thing for me that stands out is, and it was extreme, it became, crystallized. We talked about the chaos that appears on the sidelines with Jimbo Fisher and his spiral notebook and his all that. We talked about all that last week. Then you take that and you contrast that with what TCU was able to pull off at the end of their game against Baylor.
Oh God.
And like just the absolute pristine level of execution that they were able to run a running play with no timeouts and like 12 seconds on the clock or something like that.
Line up perfectly on special teams.
And they kicked the field goal with 5 seconds left. Like the clock didn't expire as the ball was snapped. The clock expired as the ball went through the uprights. Like it's that there's zero chance at all that a Jimbo Fisher, first of all, part of that is they don't have a special teams coach.
Oh yeah,
so that's a whole conversation.
I don't know if a lot of people even know that.
Yeah, so A&M does not have a designated full-time special teams coach. They consider special teams part of the defense, is the way that I understand it, and so it falls on the defensive coaches. They do have an analyst that's not a full-time coach, but is an analyst who has special teams experience and does a lot with the special teams, but his hours and time on the field with the team is very limited because of his role and his title.
Yep.
So, and not only that, like there's just zero chance that this team gets lined up for 2 separate plays, but in like 17 seconds or something like that. It just could not happen. Like there's just zero chance that play gets executed. And to me, it just like, and then you saw Sonny Dykes in the interview after the game, and he was just like as cool as could be about it. He was completely, I mean, he's proud of his team and everything that they pulled off the comeback and that they won. And, they're probably going to the college football playoff. It's a huge thing for them. But like, you see just how calm and cool. And he's like, I never doubted it for a second. Like, It's like, we practiced this every single week. We knew exactly how to do it. We knew that they would come out. Like how, like it's so, it takes one guy lining up 6 inches further back than he's supposed to line up, and you get an illegal formation penalty. Or one guy just getting a little anxious that the clock's going to run out and moving a little bit soon. Or the long snapper getting a little bit anxious and snapping it before the holder's ready. The whole thing gets blown up by one guy making one little mistake in a 12 to 15 second period of time. And they were able to execute that literally flawlessly, like absolutely perfectly. And to bring that back to A&M, there's no way that happens. There's no way. And to me, that is really the clarifying point of, at this point in college football, I really think you need a CEO head coach. Like
Yep.
I even think the best way to run an NFL program and an NFL team is to have an offensive play caller as your head coach.
Sure.
But at the college level, because of the recruiting aspect and all that goes into that, and the fact that you're really, especially with the open transfer portal, you're recruiting your entire roster every season, and you're recruiting everybody else in the country because of the open transfer portal. Obviously you're not tampering in that, hopefully. I mean, a lot of people are, but according to Jimbo, A&M's not. Yeah. But, according to Jimbo, A&M's not, yeah. Right?
But taking words, yep.
Yeah. So, and then you're recruiting all of these 4 or 5 high school recruiting classes all at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, it's become so big that it's just too much. There's no way for him to be involved in everything he needs to be involved in as the head coach and be involved enough to be a legitimate offensive coordinator, play caller at this point. And seeing TCU execute that and seeing their CEO type head coach have full faith and confidence in their ability to execute that, because he trusts his offensive coordinator. And then because he has the offensive coordinator and they're able to do all those installs, they're able to work on the situational work that it's just really clear A&M's not getting that level of situational work to have that stuff in place. And so to me, that was really sort of a clarifying point, one of those beams of light coming from the sky of like, there's just so much about what this football team looks like on the field right now that doesn't match what these really, really top echelon college teams look like right now. Part of that is youth, yes, but part of it is bigger than that. And they've got a lot to fix in that area. And it starts with that offense coordinator hire, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think both our points marry each other, honestly, because I talked about, ad nauseum of play calling. Well, when you are stubborn enough to where you just don't want to change your ways, that is the same thing as why you're not doing the things that other teams are doing. You can't tell me that Sonny Dykes didn't look at the rest of the FBS and the successful teams and what they did and study them. You can't tell me that. And when you just kind of sit in your bubble and think, I'm better than them, so I don't care. I get the recruits, I know what I'm doing. And then you fail like you did. Now, granted, he hasn't had a season like this since I think one season at Florida State, honestly, before he left. So he doesn't experience epic failures much, but he's experiencing this year. So, I mean, it's completely on just not wanting to progress, not caring enough until it smacks you in the face. So we'll just see. We'll have to see if he reacts, because you're right. I mean, watching that, I saw a professional. I mean, it was insane. It was fun to watch, and it was cool. It was like, man, this guy has got a hold on this program. And you know what? I don't care if they go to the Final Four and get beat up by Georgia or whatever. They still did enough all season because of a hell of a coaching job and just efficiency on offense to get there. And A&M has never gotten there, except for one season they almost got there. Okay, but we can't talk about that. But
yeah, and it's like it's stuff like that. It's little things in games that show where a program is. And I'll go to the NFL. We're both NFL fans. A lot of folks that listen to us are. A relatively similar situation happened this past Sunday. The Cowboys beat down the Minnesota Vikings 40-3, right? Mm-hmm. But going into the half, something like 30 seconds left, and a lot of people are like, hey, you're up, 17-3 at this point in time. Kneel on the ball, run the ball 2 times, go into half 17-3. Mm-hmm. And it's perfectly legitimate. Don't take the risk. Don't give Minnesota the opportunity to make a big play and get back, go into half at 17-10 instead of 17-3. Sure. But instead of that, the Cowboys call a couple of plays, move down the field, and with absolute pristine, and that they work this because, the broadcast has the big red field goal target line, right?
Yeah.
And CeeDee Lamb runs a route past that line, turns back, goes to the sideline, and Dak throws the ball to him out of bounds on a rope. The ball never traveled in bounds at all.
Yeah.
Dak's arm was out of bounds when he threw it, and CD was out of bounds when he caught it. And he caught the ball literally on the line of where the target, where Fox had decided or CBS had decided where the target was to get into the field goal kicker's field goal range. Like, you don't do that unless you practice. Hey, when we need to get to field goal range, we need to get to the 43-yard line. That's the line of scrimmage that we need to reach. Boom. Or where you practice, hey, today we need the 40. Today we need the 43. Today we need the 38. And you work that. And they work it because the same exact play happened in the 2016 playoffs when Mike McCarthy was with the Green Bay Packers. They did the same thing with Jared Cook down the sideline. So and Mike McCarthy gets a lot of flack for what he is as a head coach. But that stuff like that comes from the head coach level, because that's the type of coordination between areas of the team that you need to execute in those situations, in those scenarios. And that's what Sonny Dykes gave to his team. That's what we see Nick Saban give to his team so often. That's what we see Kirby Smart and all of these other coaches give to their teams. They bring that to their team Monday through Friday, and then again on Saturday game days. And unless A&M gets that from Jimbo Fisher, they will never reach that echelon of where they want to reach as a team, regardless of the talent that they get. And the point you've made, and basically this has turned into hey, this team needs to hire an offensive coordinator, and these are all the reasons why conversation. But until and unless they make that decision and remove that piece of the pie from Jimbo Fisher, because personally, at least, I feel like he's got the capability to be that, because so much of the program is in such a good place. Recruiting for 2023 is tough because it's going to be tough when you're the number 6 ranked team in the country and everything falls apart and you wind up 4-7 going into your last game. And the offense there's so many questions about the offense and all that. But 2022 recruiting was what it was. It was the 5th consecutive top 5 class or something like that he's put together. So much of the program is in such a great place. If they can get this offensive thing figured out and let Jimbo be the grand poobah and the CEO, they've got a chance to fix this thing.
And I mean,
in a big way, quickly too.
And the other thing you're talking about, how the state of the program. I think a lot of people, some of us follow these players on social media just to some of these recruits, just to see how they're thinking, just to see what they're where we can gauge their idea of what they think about Texas A&M. These guys, a lot of them are watching A&M watching them lose 6 games in a row. And I see them tweeting things out like, oh, don't worry, next year's going to be great. I can't wait to come. I can't wait to be there. I can't wait to contribute. Not all recruits do that. A lot of recruits see a losing program they committed to and flip because they just don't want to play in a losing program. There's something different about A&M, and that's what people need to get. There are changes that can be made immediately that could bring 2023 back to the light, and they could end up having a really good season because they are going to have enough good players to compete next season. It's about what are you going to do internally? And we've talked about it, the entire podcast already. Anybody who's listening to this, you've gotten every single point you can get about this. And I'm telling you, man, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Is he going to make it hard? Because he can do that. We all know Jimbo Fisher. He can make it difficult. And look, our job here is to tell you the truth and give you facts. He's not going to pull anything over our eyes and say, well, it's player development or this. Look, I've talked about how bad the O-line is all season. That can be fixed too. Okay, that's coaching. That is a lot of injuries, and that can be fixed with transfer portal and getting experience and maybe getting a new O-line coach. We don't know. But that's not some drastic thing that's going to seep into 2 years down the line. Everything else we talked about is, so you need to fix it now.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to get into this game that's coming up against LSU. But first, we're going to talk about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts And I know you do because you're listening to this one. You can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Cameron, we're going to look to our friends over at BetOnline to help us preview this A&M against LSU game quickly. The point spread on the game, I don't think really should surprise anybody. LSU is a double-digit favorite in this game. They're a 10-point favorite in this game, even though it's at Kyle Field. So what that tells you is Vegas thinks LSU is probably about 2 touchdowns better than A&M.
Yeah, sure.
On a neutral field, at least.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about the spread. Is it too tight? is it too wide? And how do you think it plays out on Saturday?
I kind of saw it this morning, and I kind of thought about. 10 points is appropriate based on their ranking. I think they were just ranked 5th in the college football playoff rankings this week. To be honest, this team is good to me. They're not great. They're very good. I think I kind of put them in that very good echelon. Going into Kyle Field against this Texas A&M team. Now, see, this is where we might differ. It was the quotes after the game with some of the players that got me thinking, okay, maybe this team just needed a win to make them feel a little better about this game, because I think if you would have lost to UMass, I think we'd be talking about everybody in the program's fired today. But it's one of those things where they just seemed very, very relieved, and they've already gotten to the mental point of, okay, we're not going to a bowl game. I'm already, making my plans for the winter and spring and all that. But we got one more game against a program we hate, and we would love to spoil. I loved Preston. His
Jalen
quote,
Preston, yeah.
Jalen Preston's quote was, "I'm going to piss in their cornflakes." I was laughing my butt off. I was like, I didn't even know he knew that term. That's kind of an older saying.
I was about to say that's one of those old Southern sayings.
Yeah. and look, I believe him. I think that he's one of those guys who played really well in the game last season against LSU. And that was a bad LSU team. Granted, A&M, who was way better than them, still lost on the road. So this is a pure rivalry that I don't think it really matters unless this was like a Joe Burrow LSU squad who I think blew A&M out like 49-0 or something. That's a different animal. That's if even he was at Kyle Field during that year where they won the title, I think he still would have beaten them down pretty bad, because the talent difference was just astronomical.
Was bonkers,
yeah. And so I don't know. 10's appropriate because of the ranking. I think it's going to be a closer game, honestly. I just do. I think that they're going to come out inspired. I wrote about this week. I think the O-line, I heard from Layden Robinson as well. I think they're going to play a little better, especially in the interior. I think they still had a crappy game against UMass, and I think that's gotten to their head, that a UMass D-line front that is undersized and, not very talented was pushing them. Okay, that's not good. Okay, and that's something that, to their own future as football players, especially someone like Layden Robinson, who we had talked about preseason, that was a potential 2nd-round pick next year. I wouldn't want to watch that film. I'm just saying, this is the type of game for guys like that to put some good film on, to play really well, to do it for the 12th man. And so, I'd like 10. I'd stay at 10. I think they're probably going to increase it by like a point or something. I bet it's going to be like 11.5 or something by the end of the week. But I think 10's kind of them saying we're a little scared of this game. Because I think if they were a real like 5th ranked squad, I think it'd be like a 15-point.
Yep. Unfortunately, I think we're losing Cameron a little bit, but the overall point that Cameron was making is very true. And hold on, I think we got Cameron back here real quick. You there, Cameron? Nope. All right, so we're going to keep going here real quick to finish up the show. Is one of the things that Vegas has held pretty consistently this year, and they even showed it in the last game against UMass with the way the line was set up. They made A&M a 33.5-point favorite against a UMass team in a game where they hadn't scored 30 points all year. And what Vegas believes clearly in the talent that's on this A&M squad, knowing that on any given day that they go out there on the field, that if they play up to their capabilities, they can play with anybody. And so that's what this 10-point line tells me. The over-under is 48, so they're saying the game's going to wind up somewhere in the neighborhood of 29-19. So I think it'll be a competitive game. I don't think A&M finds a way to win, but we'll get into those projections and things like that over the course of the rest of the week. We thank our friends at BetOnline for providing their lines. I thank Cameron for joining me today for the show. You can find Cameron on Twitter at Cameron Honesty. That's OHNYSTY on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Joey Ikes. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Aggies. You can find us on YouTube at Locked On Aggies there as well. And please make sure that you go check out Locked On Sports today for your next listen. The biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much, guys. We will see you next time.